Good evening and welcome to the new 9 p.m. edition of Tucker Carlson Tonight. Over the past year and a half, nobody argued more forcefully or more fervently against Donald Trump's presidential candidacy than multimedia veteran Glenn Beck. Beck went on the road in support of rival candidate Ted Cruz, whom he said was anointed by God to stop Trump. At one point, he predicted that 4 years of a Trump presidency would lead, quote, to civil war or worse. Well, his exhortations went unheeded, and a Trump presidency is 11 days away. So where's Glenn Beck on all of this now? Glenn Beck joins us tonight. Glenn, great to see you.
Good to see you, Tucker. First of all, let me say congratulations on your new show, and I'm honored that you would ask me to be on First Show. Let me just clarify a couple things. You bet. Never said he was anointed by God to be president of the United States. I do believe that people are called, all of us are. You're called for your job. I'm called for my job.
Right.
All of us are called for a specific time. That doesn't mean that he's the only one that can do it. It doesn't mean any of that. And it certainly doesn't mean that God's going to make that happen. We have to all play our roles. So I appreciate what you said, but it's not exactly what it meant.
Well, I think I remember it pretty well. You had said you'd been praying for and with Ted Cruz, and that you had heard that you believe that God had called him forward at this time. And so my question is really simple. And I'm not attacking you. I'm just wondering, because he didn't win and Trump did win, did it shake your faith? And what lessons, spiritual lessons, did you take from that?
No, none. I think that all of us are called by God. This kind of, and Tucker, you know this, all of us are called by God to do certain things. And sometimes those things mean just take a stand. It doesn't mean that what you think is going to work out is worked out. Just You're called for this time. I happen to believe that all of us were called at this time to take a stand in the Republic and to do the right thing.
Right. But because Trump did win, and you believe that God did have a role in this election, what message do you think God is sending us by Trump's election? What does that mean, I guess, is what I'm asking.
I can't speak for God. I don't know. Here's the message that I would get, that we are living in critical times, no different than we were living 8 years ago, 12 years ago. Things are very tough. We should humble ourselves, including me, and perhaps be a little more gentle with each other. Half of the nation right now is freaking out that Donald Trump is the president. I find it amazing that those people are freaking out, and yet they were the ones mocking and ridiculing us 8 years ago and saying, what are you worried about? Oh, you're worried about a dictatorship. Well, now they're saying it. So I think what I've learned from this election is perhaps I need to be a little more humble. Perhaps we need to be a little more kind to each other and listen to each other, or we're going to tear each other apart.
I think that's really wise advice that we could all heed, me included. I guess I'm asking you because you seem to frame this election in moral terms, almost from the beginning, that it wasn't just a contest between people who had differing views, but it really was a contest between the good and the not good, and the evil. And in your view, and I watched you on the road, I was with you for part of it, you really posited Ted Cruz as the good guy in this. And then when he lost, I think I heard you say that he was, or maybe concede that he was in fact maybe disingenuous and smarmy, actually is the word you used. Why did you change your view so much on Ted Cruz?
Wow. Because Ted Cruz, at the end, to me, for that time period, seemed to come out of the blue and endorse, when the time to endorse him was at the convention. Now, I had a different point of view than he did on the convention. And if you're going to do it, you do it there, not when it appears that your guy's going to win. That just struck me as smarmy. But Ted and I are still good friends. I still believe he's a good, decent, honorable man. That's the way I felt that day when we talked.
Right. So you're still in contact with him, and if he ran again, would you support him again?
Yes, I would. I'm not going to endorse anybody ever again.
That's probably that's good advice for all of us. What kind of president do you think Trump will make?
I don't know. I'm excited to see. I think the appointments that he has made, some of them are good. Some of the things I'm concerned about, but I haven't said anything, or I've tried not to say anything negative about him since the election. I've tried, unless there was something that was important to say. I want to see the man in action. I gave him the same thing that I said about Barack Obama. The election is over, and we fought hard, and that's the time to fight hard, at the primary and then the election. Now he has to be all of our president. And the last president, I don't feel, ever reached out to do that. I have seen, on the very first night, Donald Trump reached out. I've seen him reach out to people. I wouldn't have invited Al Gore to my office. He has reached out. And I think it's really unfair to judge him now on what he did on the election. I have concerns about the way he ran his campaign. But now let's see if the office changes him and he is the guy everybody who supports him says he's going to be. I hope he is.
Yes. Have your politics changed in watching all this? I've watched things that you've said in the last couple of months. You did a widely circulated interview with Samantha Bee, and I read people say, well, Glenn Beck is changing his views. Have your political views changed?
No. I'm a libertarian. I have always been about principles. When I started the 9/12 Project, it was about values and principles. I think this election became about winners and losers, and I understand why. Hillary Clinton, and the press doesn't seem to get this yet. They're still trying to figure out why Hillary Clinton lost. She lost because she was a horrible, dishonest candidate, and even the people who are raising money for her would say, I can't believe I'm raising money for her because she's so dishonest. That's why she lost. It's not Trump. Right. Tapped into a vein of the American people, of where they were at, what they were feeling, and she was the all-time worst candidate of all time. That's what happened. Now, what are we going to do coming forward? How are we going to behave going forward? I haven't seen the press or many people at the higher echelons of the left recognize the mistakes that they made on making people feel bad, that disagreed with Barack Obama, and I haven't seen anybody recognize that she was a bad candidate. Let's not run somebody like her again.
No, I think that's exactly right. So I remember, one of the reasons I want to talk to you is I remember sitting in my office 8 or 9 years ago and watching you on television and thinking you were the single most talented anchor I had ever seen, and I have some sense of what it takes. You were just hitting a hole-in-one every night. Just the difficulty level was awe-inspiring, and you were pulling it off. And then you left Fox, and it seemed to get much rockier from there. You had business problems, and you had a bunch of well-publicized lawsuits, etc. Do you regret not having a daily cable show, or do you think it was bad for you to have?
Oh, I regret a lot of things because I overthink. I don't think regret is the right word. I would love to have your platform where you can talk to as many people as you do in one setting. However, times are changing, and I bet on the future that the future is all on the internet. And so it's just different. It's just different.
Are the accounts true, or are they just nasty and politically motivated, that your company, The Blaze, has had financial trouble? And you blame all these people and split with your business partner, etc.
We fired a lot of people because I changed directions of the company. I think we started, when those rumors were going around, we had 245 employees. Or 246, we now have 245, and I just left an office where we were talking about 2 other people that we're going to hire. So businesses changed direction, and that's what we did. Was it a poorly run company? Yeah, it was a poorly run company. Is it now? No, I don't think so. We're fine.
Huh. Do you think, and this is something I've been thinking a lot about myself, do you think being in this business makes you happy?
No.
Has it made you happy?
No. Interacting with the people has made me happy. Thinking that my voice was bigger than it is or should be, in a way that, hey, we can move people and we can change the world, in the end made me very unhappy. It's not my job. That's not any of our jobs. Our job is just to be ourselves and try to be a good example. And by doing that, Tucker, I've learned a lot in the last 5 years. And the country is more fragile, in some ways sturdier than it was. Let's take a moment and just say, we made it through Barack Obama. Who saw that one coming? Yeah. Now, so we're stronger than we were, than I thought, but we're also in more trouble in some ways than I thought at least 8 years ago. We're to a point to where Megyn leaves, and now there are people who have, instead of celebrating you coming on the air and a new point of view, they're saying she's a traitor for leaving a company. I know nobody there believes any of that. That's ridiculous to think that. We have to stop thinking of each other as traitors if we go work for someplace else or just even disagree with each other. We've got to be able to disagree.
Would you recommend this business to, like, your kids?
I will tell you this, Tucker, and you've done it long enough to know, and you've kept your soul. You're a good guy. So you're not a good guy?
No, I don't know. I mean, I think there's a cost to everything. I wouldn't talk myself up.
No. Yeah. But you're a good, from all reports that I've ever heard, and we've met a few times, but you're a good guy. So I'm not speaking generally to you, but I think this job, I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. I wouldn't wish the fame on my worst enemy. I think fame is more corrosive than anything else. It's a horrible, horrible thing if you don't have perspective, if you want it, because it will always fade and it will warp you. It's the reason why Meryl Streep got on TV last night and had such confidence to say, we're right, in so many words. We're right, and we all know this. And those little peasants out in the middle of the country, they're wrong. Because fame, when people are making money on you, when you are watching yourself everywhere, when people are coming up to you and saying, thank you, I love you, if you're not careful, you start to buy it, and then you become Meryl Streep. That's a bad thing.
I think it's a really wise answer. How do you avoid that?
You get out the minute you want it. The minute, Tucker, that somebody, when you hear rumors, and this happens in everybody's business, to everybody all the time, somebody will start a whisper campaign that, Tucker's failing, that thing's going to go. And if your first reaction is, what do I have to do to fix it? Get out.
Want fame for its own sake?
Yeah.
I'm putting that on my refrigerator. Thank you. Glenn Beck, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Great to talk to you tonight.
You bet. Thanks, Tucker. Thank you.
Well, up next, Meryl Streep used the Golden Globes to deliver a nasty flippic against Donald Trump, football, and mixed martial arts. Laura Ingraham will be here next to explain what it all meant. Well, the Golden Globes are supposed to honor America's best performances in television and film, ostensibly, but last night they turned into a politicized circus, as you just saw. After receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award, actress Meryl Streep ripped Donald Trump in a lengthy screed. She also, for some reason, ridiculed the sports of football and mixed martial arts. Radio show host and LifeSet editor-in-chief Laura Ingraham blasted what Streep said, calling it, quote, tedious and pedestrian. Laura Ingraham joins us now in New Jersey.
I'm sorry, but I had to wear this for Alabama. Of course,
Alabama does trump all, doesn't it?
I'm sorry, but I had to. Coach Battle, who's the athletic director of Alabama, came on radio today, and I said, basically, do you dare me to wear this? He said, you're damn right I dare you to wear it on Tucker's show. And he said, he loves Tucker, but you got to wear the jersey.
Did you say roll damn tide?
You darn right I did.
Amen.
I was going to be at the game, but they were going to fly me down, but I decided I had to be with you tonight.
So I'm glad you did. And I'm glad you're here to explain what that was about. Now, the obvious response is, here are rich people talking to each other, sneering at the rest of the country.
Yeah.
But what's really going on here? What was that about?
Well, I think, she probably really believes what she says. I think there is a lot of gnashing of teeth in Hollywood and among other progressive elites. And I wrote a book years ago called Shut Up and Sing, which addressed some of this, the Dixie Chicks, et cetera, et cetera. And I think for a lot of us that really love Meryl Streep, I know some people think, they think she's overrated. I know Donald Trump, I think she's phenomenal. I think she's a phenomenal actress. But it's to me, it's a little bit... I guess I'd say selfish to be up on stage and you're being honored for your work in film.
Right.
And you decide to take that platform and turn it into a political speech. I just think, why turn off half of America? It's probably ill-timed. He's going to be president of the United States. And imagine if a conservative actor, and there are some, got up right after Barack Obama was elected and said, I really think he's illegitimate. I think he's going to destroy the country. I think it's going to be more racially polarized than ever. I think he's going to not grow our economy fast enough. And I think he's an absolute buffoon on foreign policy, doesn't know anything, and probably America's going to be weaker 8 years later. They would have been destroyed. A conservative actor would be destroyed for having done so.
Well, of course. But if she had done the equivalent of that, it wouldn't bother me nearly as much because those would be political points. She was not so much giving a political speech, but a sermon. The undertone of it, the subtext was, I'm a good person and you have fallen short, Mr. and Mrs. Trump voter in America. Where did that come from, the moralizing?
Well, I think it's the deep loathing and the deep, it's a guilt. I've done so well that now I have to be part of this club where we talk to middle America in this very mocking tone. I mean, it's ironic that she talked about Trump in The Disabled Reporter, as if no one in Hollywood in positions of power mock, ridicule, or take advantage of people in lower economic standing than they do. I mean, anyone who knows anyone has been in a casting call, especially with some of the, the top directors in Hollywood. There can be humiliation. There can be sexual harassment. All sorts of things happen in the higher echelons of power in the entertainment industry, which I'm sure top actresses like Meryl Streep know a lot about. It's not like Hollywood has some a standing to look down on the rest of America for, okay, if you supported Trump, you're implicitly biased racially against anyone who's a, quote, immigrant. You're against anyone who is of a different sexual persuasion. It is so insulting. And the most monolithic, intolerant group in America, among them, is Hollywood. Because so many of people I know, know, and I know, are literally afraid to speak out because they won't get work. They will not be hired. They won't be hired as a grip, let alone as an actor in a major motion picture, if people think they're conservative. I mean, there are a few conservatives, but usually they're people who have already made it and aren't that afraid of speaking out.
So the problem with self-righteousness, not just from actors, but from anyone, is that it sets you up, the self-righteous one, for scrutiny. Yeah. So when Meryl Streep gets up and says basically the president-elect is a bigot because of his immigration policy and his policy toward refugees, you have to ask, at her massive estate in Connecticut, has she taken a lot of Syrian immigrants in to live with her?
I would imagine the answer to that is no.
I would too.
And maybe she's incredibly generous. And again, I've had the chance of meeting her a couple of years ago. She's perfectly nice at a film premiere. But again, this is not what we go to see film for. This is not. This is why so many people are tuning out these award shows.
Increasingly, we don't go see films. Is this part of the problem?
I think it's hard to see an actor and actress today when we see them speaking about so many issues that are polarizing and that divide Americans. I mean, you really used to see, people who might have had really difficult and did have difficult personal lives, but that it was kind of the illusion. Olivier said, acting is all illusion. It's a game of illusion. But there's something to that. A little mystery is nice to have, because when you're seeing someone act a role on screen, you don't want to think, oh, God, she was doing that rant about Trump at the Golden Globes. You just want to think, wow, she was great and out of Africa, or she was great, and it kind of destroys that a little bit.
Too much information. Adam and Eve didn't eat of the tree of ignorance. It was the tree of knowledge that got them in trouble.
I wouldn't lecture Meryl Streep about acting, believe me, and I don't think maybe not lecture the rest of us about Trump.
I don't want to know what Meryl Streep thinks about the president.
Really,
no, I totally agree.
Nice job in acting.
May your team win, whatever team that is.
Okay, and we'll be politically correct. Everybody's a winner tonight. And you're going to get a big trophy. Congrats on the show.
Thank you. Great to see you. Up ahead, technology is moving faster than ever, of course. Will your job be one of those eliminated? New York Times columnist Tom Friedman joins us to talk about self-driving cars and other disruptive innovations that are changing the world faster than we can comprehend.
Robot host.
Stay tuned. Exist. Today, of course, they're totally ubiquitous, and they're making more and more jobs obsolete. Today it's McDonald's employees. Tomorrow it will be millions of truck and taxi drivers with self-driving cars. Eventually it will be lawyers and physicians and so on. Will it ever be newspaper columnists and cable news anchors? We're praying not. Joining us now is New York Times opinion columnist Thomas Friedman, author of Thank You for Being Late, An Optimist's Guide to Thriving in the Age of Acceleration. Tom Friedman, thanks a lot for coming on.
Great to be here.
You're very optimistic in this book, and I appreciate that because I love optimism. But I wondered as I read it, are people wired from an evolutionary standpoint to digest this pace of change?
No, there's no question, Tucker, that what's going on in globalization, in technology in particular, is now faster than the average rate at which humans and societies can adapt. And I think people are feeling that sense of acceleration. One of my favorite quotes in the book is from John Kelly. He ran the IBM Watson project. And he said to me when I was working on the book, he said, you know, Tom, when you buy a car, it comes with a sticker on the rear view mirror. It says objects in your rear view may be closer than they appear. That actually belongs in your front windshield now, because it's the stuff coming at us that's actually coming faster than you think. In fact, I had an experience in this book I've never had before. I've written about technology before. I felt I had a butterfly net and I was chasing a butterfly, and every time I got close, it moved. I had to interview the head of Intel at least 3 times in writing this book just to make sure nothing changed from 6 months earlier. You know, and so I was actually living that pace of change.
So I mean, it's no one person's fault, of course, though I do think a lot of us are very insensitive to its consequences, among them the political, and especially the political consequences. So the last time we had a big technological disruption, the Industrial Revolution, we got 70 years of totalitarian Marxism out of a response to that. This is a more profound change. I mean, how can you be hopeful about the political consequences?
A good question. It certainly is more profound because it's hitting a white collar and blue collar at the same time. And yet today, even with all of that going on, we have about 4.5% unemployment. Yes, there are people who drop out of the labor force, but I'm optimistic because we've actually done this before. Remember, almost 100% of us used to live and work on farms, and they worked in factories, and people worked in factories, they found service jobs, then knowledge jobs. So obviously, we've done this before. This is going to be harder, okay? There's no question about it. But I think I have a huge faith in American creativity. I was at a conference a few months ago. A woman was there. I said, what's your job? She said her job was tagging sharks for Twitter. I said, I mean, who in the world ever thought there'd be a job tagging sharks for Twitter? I certainly didn't. The point is, Tucker, you'll never see it coming. You'll never see these new jobs coming. But if we remain open and flexible, which is absolutely our value add as a country, I believe we're going to find a whole set of jobs that you can't imagine. A lot of them, Tucker, will be people dealing with people. I wrote last week about my friend Dov Seidman's idea that, you know, first we work with our hands, then we work more with our heads. Now we're going to work more with our hearts, okay? That is people dealing with people. The fastest growing restaurant chain in America in 2015 I wrote about is called Paint Night. It's people who conduct paint by numbers, basically, classes for adults in bars. Whoever thought there'd be a business doing that? But it turns out people really want to be with people. You know, I have an interview with the Surgeon General in there, Beck, and I asked him, what's the most prevalent disease in America? Is it heart disease? Is it diabetes? Is it cancer? He said it's isolation. Well, think about that. We live in the most technological age, but the Surgeon General says there are huge numbers of us people feeling isolated. And I think connecting people to people will be a huge job.
Maybe technology leads to isolation.
And I think it does. Absolutely.
But I mean, you still it's easy for us who are thriving, relatively speaking, in this economy. But the idea that people who are displaced by technology are going to seamlessly or at all find a place in this new order is really hard to believe. You can teach a farmer to run a drill press. You can't teach one to write code or a cable news host to write code. You just can't. So what about those people?
Because my point is, I don't think that's what we're going to be the cutting edge of the jobs. I think the best jobs actually are going to be these people-to-people jobs. Yes, some people write code. Unfortunately, computers will soon be writing a lot of that code. And so I think we're going to see a whole new set of jobs and industries really around the heart, around connecting people to people. It may be through restaurants, through entertainment. Think of our generation, how many people are going to need elder care as the baby boomers, retire. So I'm much more optimistic about that.
But here's what I'm glad you're optimistic. I'm not, but I'm glad that somebody is. I don't understand at a moment of change this profound why you would want to add demographic and cultural and economic change on top of economic change. And I know it benefits a small number of employers who want cheaper labor. But why would you want to let in low-skilled labor, no promise of participating in this new economy? How does that help anybody?
Well, my view on sort of openness in general is that I say in the book, and I've always said, I'm for a high wall with a big gate, okay? Which is, I believe a country has to control its borders, all right? I'm a big believer in that. But I also believe what has made America great is that we have attracted more high IQ risk takers than any country in the world, and high energy risk takers, okay? They may be lower skilled, but high energy. That's what's made
Shouldn't
us
we
great.
screen for them? Because our current immigration
Sure,
system just says if you
yeah.
have a relative here, you get to come. Shouldn't we say, wait a second, are you impressive or not?
That may be. I'm really agnostic on how we best, bring in these people. But what I would hate to see us do, Tucker, is to close off America as this giant magnet. We are who we are as a country because we've attracted more of these risk takers. My great-grandparents and somewhere your who left somewhere bad and came to somewhere they thought were better. Armenian friend of mine likes to say that new immigrants are paranoid optimists.
Yeah.
They're paranoid, they're optimists because they came from somewhere bad to somewhere they hope were better, but they're always paranoid. They're afraid that it can be taken away from them, and that makes them enormously energetic. We've got to balance that, obviously. I'm not for opening the borders.
No, and I get it. I myself am a refugee from California, so I know. I know the feeling. Tom Friedman, thank you for being latest book. Thanks all for joining us.
Really appreciate it. Thanks, Tucker.
Up next, Donald Trump boasted today about bringing home nearly 3,000 automotive jobs to the state of Mexico. Michigan, they would have gone to Mexico. How much should the government spend on protecting jobs like those? We'll talk it over with Mike Rowe of Dirty Jobs fame. It's finally happening. Fiat Chrysler just announced plans to invest $1 billion in Michigan and Ohio plants, adding 2,000 jobs. This after Ford said last week it will expand in Michigan and U.S. instead of building a $1 billion plant in Mexico. Thank you, Ford and Fiat C. Well, these investments are expected to create nearly 3,000 jobs. But in a country of more than 300 million, how much more of this will we need, and how far should government go to preserve work? Joining us now is television show host Mike Rowe. Mike, thanks all for joining us.
Tucker, congratulations. Look at me and you in prime time.
On the first show, you were the first request we put in.
I know.
So thank you for doing it.
Of course.
I think it goes without saying this is a good thing. I think it's always good when American jobs are saved. But you're already seeing a backlash against this. People saying, well, what about the Mexican citizens who would have worked in those plants in Mexico? How should we feel about this?
I feel pretty good. I mean, look, it's not just jobs. And when I say that, I don't mean to minimize it at all, but there's just something, in my humble opinion, larger at work here. And it has to do with our identity. It has to do with what it feels like when we're actually making things as a country. People ask me all the time about Dirty Jobs, what was the big lesson? And the lesson was the value that comes from, getting your hands on a thing and always knowing how you're doing because you're a part of some kind of process. I just think, on a micro level, that was the case for me. But on a macro level for the country, it's just important for us to collectively feel like we're making something.
So a manufacturing job, even while, let's say, it pays 60 grand, is worth something more to the country than, I don't know, pick another field, retail or finance that may pay more because it makes us feel better?
Well, look, I get uncomfortable when we start to talk about, it's heads better than tails. They're blue collar, white collar, retail, this sector, that vertical. Ford invented mass production. It's an American company that showed us the critical importance of being able to do the same thing the same way over and over again, and to have them affirmatively, digging back into this country to do that very thing. I just think there's an exponential component to it that goes right to the national identity, and I don't think you can overestimate the importance of feeling good about making a thing.
But conservatives have argued for really generations that the most important thing is to respect the market, and which should proceed unhindered, especially by government. And they're giving up something. I mean, if you're a market absolutist, you can't really look at this and be that happy about it, can you?
Well, it just depends on how absolute the market is, right? I mean, if the absolute market is the country or 5 countries or the entire world, or the entire universe, whatever that means. Look, our economy is global, and I get it. A car that's manufactured in Mexico, where labor is 85% cheaper than it is in the United States, is going to be cheaper for the consumer, theoretically, and that's fundamentally a good thing in a global market economy. Look at me, I'm not an economist. What do I know? But it's just math, right? But at some point, we have to ask ourselves, if you just keep extrapolating that, who are we? What do we do other than buy things that other countries make on our behalf? And then eventually, when the bottom falls out, it's like Idiocracy, that movie. We don't know how to hang a picture anymore, much less make a car. And so, we can talk about what's best for the consumer. We can talk about what's best for the worker. It's really hard to do both at the same time.
Yeah.
I get it. But in this larger sense, I just can't imagine how anybody could look at decisions to bring manufacturing back here and ultimately reward the kind of behavior that I think we all want to encourage.
Right. So I see by your backdrop, you're in San Francisco. You must be sort of for technology. I think most Americans are sort of for technology, but it's also one of the reasons so many of our jobs have left. It's not just wages and unions, it's technology. What should the government's posture toward new technologies that will certainly destroy jobs be? Driverless cars, for example. They're going to put a lot of people out of work. Should the government actively impede the development of those technologies in order to save jobs?
Man, it's a bit past my pay grade, but I do appreciate the dichotomy right now in the trucking industry. There's this giant shortage of drivers. They call me all the time and say, can we do a program through your foundation that will help get people in our industry? At the same time, you don't really need a crystal ball to see 5-10 years down the road. They could be driverless. We talked the last time about Huxley, right? And the difference between effectiveness and efficiency and ultimately, efficicizing ourselves right out of the economy. I don't know. I think it's insane to go backwards. I think always forward makes sense. And in my little foundation, the smartest thing I can come up with to say repeatedly is, look, get a skill that's in demand, that's really in demand, that can't be outsourced. What that means vis-a-vis technology, I don't know. What it means vis-a-vis retail, hard to say. A lot of big retail stores are contracting right now.
Yeah.
But plumbers, steam fitters, pipe fitters, carpenters, mechanics, those men and women right now, welders, can pretty much write their own ticket. And so, again, on a micro level, I see a lot of reasons to feel really optimistic.
So what's your new show?
I'm not allowed to talk about that, but the old one, well, look, there are a couple things going on, but you might remember Somebody's Got to Do It. It was over at that other news network for a while.
Yeah,
and
very well.
so season 4 never aired. It just, the election got so insane, and I wanted to find it a new home. And I'm supposed to sign a deal like today or tomorrow, but season 4 of Somebody's Got to Do It will be back very shortly, and the whole thing is going to pop up someplace else. And sorry, I wish I could just say there it's going to be, but every time I talk that optimistically about my own personal economy, some machine of the god swoops in and it goes off the rails. So I'm going to keep my mouth shut.
Boy, do I know that feeling.
Right?
Bro, it's great to see you. Yes, very, very well. Very well. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Tips.com.
Congratulations, Tucker time. I love it.
Thanks, man. See ya.
You bet. See ya.
Up ahead, in case you're tuning in for the first time, we'll give you a sense of what you can look forward to on this show in its 9 p.m. incarnation. And then, joining us in the friend zone, Martha McCallum, the brand new host of the show The First 100 Days, and everyone's favorite here at Fox. We'll be right back. We invite one of our friends from within the building here at Fox onto the show. And tonight, we are honored to be joined by Martha McCallum, host of Fox's brand new 7 p.m. program, The First 100 Days. Martha, it is great to see you.
Hi there, Tucker. Great to see you. Congratulations.
Well, congratulations to you for at least 100 days. You're going to be at 7. What are you going to do?
Well, you know what? We're going to talk about really this historic period that is about to happen and this incredible election that we all watched unfold over the course of 18 months. And we're going to dig into sort of the question of truth and accountability. What does the Donald Trump presidency in the first 100 days actually look like? He's made a lot of promises. He's promised to cut taxes, to do corporate tax reform, regulations, all these things that are supposed to roll out on day one. We're going to really be holding him accountable. And then we're going to ask people in America, what do you think? How do you think this is measuring up to the expectations that you had? Because expectations are huge from the people who love him, and the people who don't love him are waiting for him to fail. So we're going to, sort of take the measure of the man over the course of those 100 days.
Do you have a sense of what people are looking at? Well, I mean, there are so many different issues that people care about, but do you have a sense of what the big ones are in this incoming administration?
When you think back, Tucker, to what people said during the course of the election, right? Over and over and over, people said to all of us, I just want somebody who's going to shake things up. I'm so tired of the stagnation that I see in Washington, and I want somebody who's going to go in there and do things differently. And, so far, what we've seen in the president-elect period is extraordinary in terms of action and in terms of sentiment that rolls over just at the beginning of a tweet. So, that kind of thing is what people expect from him, and he's going to have to continue to hold that bar high for them. And I keep thinking about Ed Koch in New York, how he used to walk around and go, how am I doing, So, we're going to try to sort of answer that question, the Ed Koch question, and we're going to talk to focus groups and people out there about what they think in terms of how it's going, because it's going to be, he's put the bar pretty high for himself, and we're going to see if he measures up to it.
If they hire Trump to shake things up, they will not be disappointed.
No.
So you host a 2-hour show every single day.
Yep.
I go on every week, and I'm honored to do that. Then you're on election night.
Yep.
Where did you get that work ethic?
That's a good question. I think I've always worked hard, maybe not in high school. Okay, I admit that. But like after high school, I worked as a waitress in New York City. I think working as a waitress, I always tell this to people and I always tell this to kids, it's one of the hardest jobs you'll ever have. You got to balance a lot of stuff, and you've got to make sure that you're keeping people happy all the time as you're going around from table to table. And I think it was really good training for me as a young person to have to, make my way in New York City and pay my rent and take care of stuff and, make sure that I showed up on time. And, it's important to me. I think it's always been important to me to have people feel that I was doing, what they hired me to do. And it started, I guess way back then. I don't know. I've been working in jobs since I was, 15 years old. So
what
like
restaurant?
Working.
And was it a good restaurant? And how
no,
was it?
Terrible restaurant. One restaurant was a seafood place over on 2nd Avenue, which was closed for health violations several times. There were things living in the closet that, the drunk woman at the bar used to think was a cat, but it was actually something else that was sort of like furry and ran around in the closet. There was also the Mexican restaurant, which I did get fired from one place, which was a Mexican restaurant up on the west side at one point. And I worked at a pasta place, which I actually was a manager of. I had a really executive position there for a little while.
Why did you get fired?
I got
from the
fired
Mexican
because the manager didn't want us to hand out Halloween candy on Halloween, and I was like, come on, that's ridiculous. I think he felt that I was sort of like stepping on his toes because I was like, come on, this is so stupid. We're just going to hand out Halloween candy to the kids. And it's sort of, one thing led to another and sort of snowballed. But it was the only job I was ever fired from, so that was probably a good experience in and of itself, too.
I thought you were going to say for being drunk at work, but it was for handing out candy?
No, that was after work.
That's unbelievable. What was your first TV job?
My first TV job was doing business minutes for the Wall Street Journal, and it was called TV Tokyo. And, I was a producer because I started as a segment producer, line producer, field producer, and I was perfectly happy doing that on the other side of the camera. And a great guy who I worked for said, you know what, we just want to try this out. Let's see what happens if we put it in front of the camera. And, it was pretty fun. So I did business minutes for them for a little while, and one thing led to another. And next thing I knew, I was working as a reporter for the Wall Street Journal Report on weekends. And then I was at CNBC, and, the rest is history, as they say.
But it all began at a rat-infested restaurant on 2nd Avenue.
Yeah. What other kind is there in New York City, really? I mean, really.
I love it. Martha McCallum, thank you for doing this. We will see you at 7 p.m. every night for at least 100 days starting next week.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, pal.
Can't wait.
Good to see you.
Thanks, Martha.
You bet.
See ya. Well, coming up next, we look back at some of the best debate moments in the first 2 months of this show. We'll give you a sense of what you can expect at 9 going forward. We'll be right back. Say, it was just an election, and it was Democratic, and nobody got cancer, and nobody died, and maybe we should toughen up a little.
The public, of course, would like their cake and eat it too, but you cannot have both of those.
Before you continue to patronize the public, let me just make one thing really clear. If you drive your car through a crowd of people and murder someone with a knife, are you not a terrorist? Why did you put quotes around?
I didn't say that the man. I didn't say that the man wasn't a terrorist.
You're entirely entitled to your opinion. My only point is that you ought to label yourself as what you are, which is an advocate. And so you say things like this. How can Trumpsters defend a president?
Let's stop for a second. You won't give me an example.
I'm trying to give you one right now.
Then give me. Here, you know what? Let's play the game another way. I spent a little while just sort of doing some research on you.
Why don't you answer? Let me ask you this question, if you would.
Tucker Carlson falsehoods.
In this case, you said it takes flipping cars over. And my point is, someone paid for those cars. Like, those aren't your cars. and to destroy other people's property to make your political point isn't really a valid path, is it?
Well, first of all, they flipped cars when the Cubs won.
My point, just to say it again, is you don't actually know anything about what you're talking about, and you're throwing out a lot of allegations as if someone were against clean air or for mercury. Is there another side to the case? Do you understand their position, or does that not even interest you, learning what they think? Is that your example of his racism? Are you being serious?
First of all, I don't think I called him racist.
You called him racist like 9 times in the column. I mean, it's...
Well, no, but if we're going to use the word...
And I'm asking you, what's the example of his racism, and you don't have one? One last time, Congressman. Look into the camera and said, hack John Podesta's emails. We know for a fact that Putin's government did that. You can't, and you know you can't, and you're hiding behind weasel words.
I just said that the
Say they hacked John Podesta's emails.
Russians, I'm not going to be specific as to...
Oh, because you don't know it, that's why. All right, done. 1. Well, that's about it for us tonight. We'll hope you tune in every night at 9 p.m. Eastern. And just in case you can't, don't forget to DVR the show so you can watch it at your leisure, maybe in the morning. Also, our staff tells us it's highly prestigious to have millions and millions of Twitter followers. So be sure to follow the show if you're inclined. Sean Hannity, up next. Be sure to watch that. Have a great night. See you tomorrow.